Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. So here's a brand new deck profile for you guys today. This time it's on Albaz. Now this is actually the budget build using cards only within the Albaz Strike Structure Decks. So yeah, I'm only using cards exclusively in that structure deck alone. I'm not adding any other cards, but I will be building a competitive branded deck. So it's going to be the Despia branded basically. But yeah, I figured I'd show you guys like what my take on this strategy is. And yeah, again, and this is actually a really strong structure deck, I'm not gonna lie. There's a lot of insane reprints. And funny enough, there's a lot of cards that you can actually use as a side deck. So that's one of the cool things about this strategy. So anyway, figured I'd show you guys what I came up with, and yeah, let's go and get started. So main deck is 40 cards, starting off with 3 copies of Fallen of Albaz. Naturally, this is going to be the main key to the strategy simply because he's a super poly on legs, and just about all the fusion monsters that we use list Fallen of Albaz as materials. And again, that's going to be pretty important for this strategy. And of course, let's not forget the 1 copy of Albion, the Shadow Dragon. It does count as Fallen of Albaz while it's on the field or in the graveyard. So yeah, it's pretty cool in that regard. And it's also a upstart goblin. So like if you need to, send a branded spell or trap from your deck to the grave, you can just put this card in the bottom of the deck and draw 1 card. Or if you just need a big body, you can just send 1 branded spell or trap from your hand and special summon this card. So yeah, Albion is really strong. Next, 3 copies of Spriggan's Kit. This is basically the searcher of the strategy. She also cycles back some of your cards too, so that's pretty nice. So basically, you can either search or recycle one of your branded spells or traps, but you have to place 1 card from your hand and place it to the bottom of the deck. And if you control a fusion monster that lists Fallen of Albaz as fusion material, you can actually special summon this card. So Spriggan's Kit's just great as an extender and as a search/recycler piece. So definitely a welcome addition to the Albaz archetype. Next, 3 copies of Tri-Brigade Mercourier. So this is actually a card I sort of misread during the box opening. So this card list says that if you control a Albaz fusion monster, basically, or an Albaz or fusion monster that lists Fallen of Albaz, when your opponent activates a monster effect, you can send this card from your hand or face up field to the grave and negate that effect. And keep in mind, this does not actually destroy. So it's a good way just to kind of like protect yourself and just like stop your opponent from playing monster effects. Or if you need to like resolve an ash, like another copy of Branded Fusion, your opponent attempts to ash it, you could just discard this if you already control a fusion monster. So yeah, Tri-Brigade Mercourier is actually a lot stronger than I gave it credit for. Also, if this card is banished, you can add from your deck 1 Fallen of Albaz or 1 monster, that mentions Fallen of Albaz. So pretty good. Of course, it can't be itself, but still, like there are ways you can actually search this card anyway, so we'll get to that later on. And the last of the new support, 1 copy of the Golden Sword Soul. So when your opponent declares an attack, you can special summon this card directly from your hand and negate the attack. Also, I believe this card allows you to destroy that monster too. Yep, you do get to destroy that monster. And it has the exact same clause. If it's banished, you get to add a... or actually, no, I'm sorry. It has a different clause. If a monster is banished face up, except during damage, you can banish this card from your field or grave, special summon 1 light spellcaster monster from your hand or grave whose attack equals to its own defense. So basically, I think this is more related for Dogmatical Fleur-de-Lis simply because I believe that one has matching attack points, and yep, actually it does. So that actually comes to our next card. 2 copies of Dogmatical Fleur-de-Lis. It is a spellcaster monster. I thought this thing was warrior. I completely forgot about that. And its attack does equal to its defense points. So yeah, Golden Sword Soul can easily get you access to this card. Moving on, 1 copy of Artifact Sight, just because, it's just a good way to punish back removal. So if your opponent pops this, you could just special summon it and lock them out of their extra deck for the turn. For the other hand traps, I'm running 3 Ghost Ogre, 3 Effect Failure. It's crazy the fact that Ghost Ogre is a common in this, so I'm really happy to see it. But yeah, that pretty much rounds up all our monsters here. All right, moving on to spells already. Running 3 copies of Pot of Extravagance. This really needed a reprint, I'm not going to lie, so I'm really happy that this structure deck has it. Of course, we got the big one, 3 copies of Branded Fusion. Lets you summon a fusion monster that lists Fallen of Albaz as material, using monsters from your hand, field, or even your deck. So it's really strong, the fact that you can just get an Albion, and you can go into something else like a Libellion. So yeah, Branded Fusion is definitely one of the key cards that we need for this strategy. And this basically acts as a 1-card Dragoon if you want to play Dragoon with this deck, but yeah. But anyway, moving on, 3 copies of Branded Loss. It's basically the magical meltdown of the strategy, but when you perform a fusion summon, you can add one Fallen of Albaz or 1 monster that lists Fallen of Albaz in its text. So pretty good. So Branded Loss is definitely a good support card for the strategy too. So I definitely like it. We also got a Branded Bond, which special summons a Fallen of Albaz that is banished or in your hand or in your graveyard during end phase. If this card is sent to the graveyard because it was sent there to activate the effect of Fallen of Albaz, you can reset it. And the same clause kind of goes with some of the other cards like Branded in White, which is another fusion card, but you get to banish materials from your graveyard as well. We also got a Gold Sark just to get access to our best cards. It takes 2 turns to get it, but still, at least we can have it for setup. 1 Called by the Grave because it's limited. Moving on to traps, 2 copies of Tikaboo. This deck runs so many different types. Like, yeah, this deck can easily play with Tikaboo, and yeah, it's just crazy. 2 copies of Back to the Front. That's just a Monster Reborn-ish effect. Yeah, the monster has to come back in defense mode, but that's really not going to be much of a problem, all things considering. Screams of the Branded, which is a Monster Reborn for fusion monsters. The new Branded Sword, which generates tokens, so it's a scapegoat. And the fact that you could banish it to recycle a banished Fallen of Albaz or a monster that mentions it is pretty good. Of course, you can only use one of its effects per turn and only once that turn, but yeah, both do come up, so definitely give it a shot when you get a chance. And last but not least, Branded Retribution, which is a negation on a spell, trap, or monster effect, so long as you control a fusion monster that lists Fallen of Albaz as material. But of course, you have to return it to the extra deck, or you can shuffle back 2 fusion monsters in your graveyard that mentions Fallen of Albaz. So yeah, definitely a weird clause, but it's pretty good when it comes up. But I think it's just a suitable one of course. All right, so that pretty much rounds out the main deck. For the extra deck, since we are running Pot of Extravagance, I had to basically adjust the extra deck accordingly. So I'm running 3 copies of Labellion, which basically is Albion, but the only difference is that you have to discard a card for cost and then shuffle back fusion materials to make another fusion monster. Of course, it can't attack the turn it uses this effect, but it's still pretty strong, all things considering. 3 copies of Mirror Jade, which is surprisingly easy to make. Just requires a Fallen of Albaz, fusion, synchro, exceeds, or a link monster. And of course, the card has a disruption piece where you get to banish a card your opponent, or banish a monster your opponent controls. And it's just sizable, all things considering. Of course, you can't use the banish effect the following turn, but again, it's not going to be much of a problem. If you're just looking to break a board, this is the card to do it. You activate it during your own turn. Yeah, your opponent's safe for the next turn during his turn, but of course, when it comes back your turn, you can use it again. But also, Labellion, weirdly enough, is a light monster, but it requires a dark monster to make it. But it's whatever, you know? Then again, Albion is kind of the same regard. It's just backwards. So this card requires a light monster to make it, but it's a dark attribute monster. So yeah, it's just crazy. But this one also does a fusion summon on summon, and you just have to banish the materials. Oh, one cool thing about Labellion I forgot to mention is that it shuffles back materials from field, grave, or face-up banish. So you always get your materials back. You never it's like you never run out of resources, which is amazing. Anyway, moving on. 2 copies of Titanic Lad, which, you know, if it's sent to the graveyard, you get access to your Fleur de Lis. 2 Brigand, which basically helps you get access to your Mercury a little faster if it's in the grave. But of course, this one's pretty nice because it can't be destroyed in battle, and it's huge. And it just requires a Fallen of Albaz plus 1 level 8 or higher monster. So, and considering that there's a lot of big boss monsters out there, you could just simply, like, for example, Golden Lord, summon out Fallen of Albaz, and just, yeah, super poly it away. Another cool card that a lot of people tend to overlook, 2 copies of Sprin the Iron Dash Dragon. Requires 1 Fallen of Albaz plus 1 fusion monster that was special summoned this turn. And one thing I like about it is that, yeah, you could just simply super poly it away and just go in the fact that it can also change its columns too. So like you can move it to a different monster zone, and then you have the option of nuking every face-up card within that column that it moves to. So Sprin the Iron Dash Dragon is definitely pretty cool. Plus it gets you access to Spriggan's Kit if it's in the graveyard during the end phase, which I forgot to mention. That's the clause for all these other fusion monsters, is that their effects activate during the end phase. So yeah, definitely something to look into. So yeah, definitely give it a shot. All right, so that rounds out our extra deck. For our side deck, the side deck is a little weird, but I decided to go with cards that I felt like were really strong going second especially. So I decided to go 2 copies of Chaos Dragon Legionnaire, because, you know, you're running a lot of lights and darks, so you're bound to resolve any one of his effects. 2 copies of Radian, the multi-dimensional kaiju, you know, because, you know, the fact that you could just kaiju a monster, summon a Fallen of Albaz, and just take it back for yourself is really nice. And of course, you can summon out another kaiju for yourself if you open up with Thunder King. So yeah, Thunder King is definitely great as just an additional piece. 3 copies of Dark Ruler No More, you know, naturally, because going second, you just want to negate any and all disruptions. 3 D Barrier, just to stop cards like Fusion Destiny from resolving. So like if you already have a fusion monster out, or if you didn't open up with the right pieces, you can just set this and just wait till next turn. That way you can get some follow-up. I'm also running 3 copies of Warning Point as just like an additional piece, because this one actually targets cards, and that card not only has its effects negated, but also that monster will not be able to be used as fusion, synchro, exceeds, or even link material. So definitely something to look into as well. But yeah, figured I'd show you guys what I got, and yeah, I definitely like what this list provides. So anyway, that's all I got for you guys today. Hope you guys enjoyed this, and I will catch you guys again on the competitive build of this strategy. So until then, see you guys next time.